What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare, and in today's episode we're going to be covering one of the new weapons with Season 2, and this is the Grau 5.56, which is based on the SIG 550 platform. So this assault rifle is earned at tier 15 of the Battle Pass for Season 2. It is a part of the free Battle Pass, so you don't need to spend any money to get it. And it has a damage profile of 28, 23, 18, which is pretty standard for the full auto 5.56 assault rifles, and this means it's going to be a 4 to 6 shot kill. As for headshots, it has a multiplier of 1.49, which takes our headshot damage profile to a 42, 35, 27, and this means up close you do need 2 headshots mixed in with a body shot in order to get a 3 shot kill, and at mid-range you just need 1 headshot mixed in with body shots in order to get a 4 shot kill. As for our rate of fire, this is pretty moderate at 750 rounds per minute. Just for comparison, this is actually most similar to the Kilo 141, which has a rate of fire of 779 rounds per minute. So the Kilo is a little bit faster, but they are very similar here. What this means for our time to kill is in the 4-shot kill range, we get a 240 millisecond time to kill, which is a little bit below average for assault rifles, but not by a significant degree. You're still putting people down pretty quickly with this gun. As for our time to kill potential, assuming we're hitting those 2 headshots mixed in with a body shot up close to get a 3-shot kill, this time to kill potential is 160 milliseconds, which is very fast. Moving on to our ranges, this is definitely one of the strong points of the Grau 5.56. Our 4-shot kill range is about 34 meters, and our 5-shot kill range extends out to about 60 meters. This gun absolutely has the best range profile out of all of the full auto 5.56 guns in this game. So even though that time to kill of 240 milliseconds up close is a little bit slower than average, it does stretch further than most other guns, and therefore this gun really seems to excel at mid-range. As for suppressors, the lightweight suppressor will reduce our ranges by 25%, and monolithic will increase our ranges by about 7.5%. And this just brings us to our hardcore ranges, and unfortunately the Grau 5.56 is always going to be a 2-shot kill in hardcore unless you're hitting headshots up close. But overall, this gun doesn't really excel in hardcore modes. When it comes to hipfire, as you can see here, we've got pretty standard hipfire and quite good hipfire. It's right in line with most of the other assault rifles in this game. Next, we'll have a look at idle sway, which as you can see here, there isn't much idle sway. This is fairly standard for assault rifles. The gun barely moves when aiming down sight. On top of that, we get a really solid recoil pattern with this gun. It does have a little bit of side-to-side bounce, but it's not so much that it generally throws you off target. And aside from that, it kicks basically straight upwards, so very easy to manage, very easy to control. But you may want to consider some attachments that help with recoil stabilization to control that side-to-side bounce just a bit. Moving on to handling, our aim down sight time is great at 234 milliseconds. This is tied for the best in the assault rifle category with the Ram 7. And it's definitely one of the strong suits of this gun. As for our sprint out times, this is standard for assault rifles at 267 milliseconds for our normal sprint out time and 400 milliseconds for our tactical or super sprint out time. The magazine capacity is standard for assault rifles at 30 rounds with 60 in reserve, and our reload add time is 1.32 seconds, which is very solid. However, you can speed that up just a little bit with sleight of hand, and you can cut that reload time down to 1.19 seconds. It's worth noting that sleight of hand has a very small impact on this gun compared to others, and as a result, I would say it's much less of an attractive option to use on this gun. As for our movement speed, this is very impressive for an assault rifle at roughly 96.5 to 97%. This is more in line with a lot of the SMGs in this game. This is absolutely the fastest moving assault rifle, which is another one of its upsides. Unfortunately, that SMG movement speed doesn't apply to our aim down sight stray speed. This is more in line with assault rifles at 53%. So that wraps it up for the base stats of the Grau 5.56 that you need to know, but now it's time to move into some unique attachments, and this gun has quite a few unique attachments. Let's kick it off with the barrels, and the first barrel we have access to is the ZLR Drifter A08 barrel. With this one, our aim down sight speed is actually improved by about 2 frames at 60 FPS, so it's now 200 millisecond aim down sight time, which is more so in line with SMGs in this game, which is great. And in addition to that, our movement speed is increased by 2%, so this is now extremely fast when it comes to movement speed. And this also helps with our recoil control, which is kind of strange because normally short barrels will harm our recoil control. But with this one, we get a built-in underbarrel grip, which means it also blocks off the underbarrel slot if you are using this barrel. So that is the trade-off to that, and that's why we get improved recoil control. But when we look at the side-by-side here, all I'm noticing is it seems like we're getting more side-to-side bounce and very slightly less total magnitude to our recoil. So I wouldn't really put too much stock in this improvement to our recoil control. If anything, it looks like this might make it slightly more difficult to hit your target. But those are the upsides. Now let's move into the downsides, and the first one is a very noticeable reduction to our damage range. This is a 25% reduction, and it's one of the reasons that I will likely be staying away from this barrel. On top of that, our bullet velocity is reduced, and this is going to make it a bit more difficult to hit moving targets at longer ranges. As for the next barrel, this is the 26.4-inch Archangel barrel, and this one massively improves our damage ranges. This is a 45% increase to our damage range, which is insane. And on top of that, this does improve your bullet velocity as well as recoil control, which if we have a look at it right here, you can definitely see a very clear improvement to your recoil control, unlike with the last barrel we looked at. However, at the same time, I wouldn't say this added recoil control is really necessary. It's just a nice bonus. Also, you might have noticed that the iron sights are significantly different with this barrel. That actually applies to all of the barrels for this gun. As for the downsides, we do get a pretty significant reduction to our aim down sight speed. With this barrel, your aim down sight speed is now 300 milliseconds, which is roughly 4 frames slower at 60 FPS. So a very, very noticeable slowdown to your aim down sight speed. On top of that, our movement speed is reduced by roughly 3.5%, which again, that's a pretty noticeable reduction, and it basically eliminates that big upside that this gun tends to have over the other assault rifles. But that's the second barrel covered. Now let's move on to the third one, which is the XRK Chen Mark II. With this one, our damage range is increased by 25%, which is a very nice boost. It's not quite 45%, but it's still a very noticeable boost to your damage range, which is great. And this also improves bullet velocity, and the only downside to this is a slight reduction to our aim down sight speed. Our new aim down sight time with this is just 250 milliseconds, which is still very, very fast. It's barely slower than the standard aim down sight time. And also, I just wanted to point out this is what the iron sight looks like, since it is different than all of the other ones. And overall, I really like this barrel. That 25% boost to your damage range is well worth a very, very slight reduction to your aim down sight time. So finally for barrels, we have one more, and this is the 20.8-inch Nexus barrel, and with this one, we get a 40% increase to our damage range, which is an incredible boost. Also, bullet velocity is improved, and recoil control, which if we have a look at the side-by-side right here, that's a very noticeable reduction to our recoil, which is nice. And the downsides to this are a reduction to our aim down sight speed. It's now going to be 267 milliseconds, which is about 2 frames slower at 60 FPS, and our overall movement speed is reduced by 3%. So basically, this is a slightly more moderate version of the Archangel barrel that we looked at earlier, and I definitely would prefer using this over the Archangel barrel just because we don't have nearly as much punishment to our aim down sight time, and really the difference between a 40% boost to our range and a 45% boost to our range, they're both a massive increase to our base range, and therefore I would lean more towards this one over the Archangel. So those are the barrel attachments. Now let's move into the magazine attachments. The first one is a 50-round magazine, and with this one, it says that it reduces your aim down sight speed. However, based on my tests, there is no measurable change to this at 60 FPS, so that's not really something you have to worry about. And on top of that, our movement speed is reduced by roughly 1%, so very slight reduction there. Now, if you want to go a little bit bigger, you can use these 60-round magazines, which again, there is no measurable change to our aim down sight time. However, our movement speed is a little bit slower. We lose 2% to our movement speed this time around. Next up, when it comes to unique attachments, we have the Cronin Shark Underbarrel Grip. And with this, it improves our aiming stability, which if we have a look at the side-by-side here, you can definitely see an improvement to our aim down sight stability. And with this, we lose 1% to our movement speed. So pretty basic attachment, not too much to mention there. And on top of that, we have the XRK Void 2 grip in the rear grip section. And I just wanted to point out that based on my tests, this is just the same as having a stippled grip on other guns. It helps your aim down sight speed by 1 frame and your sprint out time by a couple frames. So finally, that wraps it up for everything you really need to know about the Grau 5.56. However, now it's time to move into some great attachment combinations and example class setups. The first attachment combination I wanted to share is a really nice aggressive class setup for this. It's kind of like an SMG assault rifle hybrid, and it just suits my playstyle super well. So with this, we are using that XRK Chen Mark II barrel, which does help our ranges by 25%, which is excellent. And there's very minimal reduction to our aim down sight speed, which we actually counteract that by using the no stock attachment. So now we still get an excellent aim down sight time. On top of that, we're using that XR2 Void 2 grip, which is like the stippled grip tape in the rear grip. We also have a 50 round magazine just because I like dealing with multiple enemies and I like having a lot of total starting ammo, so that's a nice boost. There's also very little downside to this. And finally, to wrap it all up, we've got the Commando foregrip, which is just going to help a little bit with that side-to-side bounce, which is a nice little bonus. I absolutely love using this gun with this particular setup, but let's just take that into an example class setup. With this, we've got the 1911 as our secondary. Perk 1 is EOD. Perk 2 is Point Men, since it did get a pretty significant buff, and I'm noticing I'm getting streaks up very easily and very often with this setup while playing the objective. And also Battle Hardened, since that also got a pretty decent buff. As for our lethal, this is a C4, and our tactical is Stim Shot. This class right here is just so versatile, so good for playing the objective. You can be aggressive with it, you can also hang back with it and still pick people off at range. And it's actually become one of my favorite class setups in the game right now. But that's the first one. Now I want to move into the second one, which is more of a hanging back, picking people off at range, as well as stealth kind of a build. With this, we're using the Nexus barrel, which gives us a very solid boost to our damage ranges. We've also got a tactical suppressor on there because this is designed to be stealthy. Our optic is going to be an operator reflex on this. We've once again got that XR2 Void 2 rear grip. And finally, we've got the 50 round magazine with this. With this setup, you do have to slow down a little bit compared to the previous setup, but I really like it if you're trying to go on longer streaks. And taking that into an example class setup, this one is designed more so around ground war modes. And with this, we've got our Desert Eagle as our secondary. For perks, we're taking advantage of the change they made to the perk system and combining Kill Chain with Ghost. So this allows us to stay off the radar, pick people off, and once we get our first streak, that streak will then contribute to the next one, which then contributes to the next one. And I've been finding chopper gunners are so easy to get in ground war with this combination. As for our tier 3 perk, this is Shrapnel, which when you combine it with those 2 thermites, this allows you to take out enemy tanks a lot easier when playing ground war. And finally, our tactical is once again going to be a Stim Shot. And with that, that pretty much covers it for today's gun guide on the Grau 5.56. As for my thoughts on this gun, I think it's absolutely an upper tier assault rifle. Like I said at the beginning, up close, yes, you will be beat out by M4s in the time to kill department, but you do make up for this with many of the other upsides like the improved aim down sight time, the crazy movement speed, and also an excellent range and recoil profile. When you combine everything together, it just makes for a very solid, very versatile weapon, and it's actually become one of my new favorites. Of course, though, that's just my opinion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the Grau 5.56 so far with Modern Warfare? Also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, of course, I will leave a link to the playlist down below. And yes, the Striker 45 Gun Guide will be coming very soon. I'm going to try to get it out tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, then on Saturday it will be out. So if you want to make sure you catch that one, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider turning on that bell notification. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll talk to you guys next time.